All right, good evening. Monday, January 28th, 6:30. We're going to open the meeting with the minutes, or the voting designation. Tonight will be Pam Sanderson, Justin Miller, Brenda DiMatteo, and myself, Matt Fowler. Has everyone had a chance to look at the minutes?
No.
Is
it? No.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
I make a motion we accept the minutes.
Got a motion? Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. And we're going to jump right into the cases. Continued case 1804 Northwood Mountain View Development, First New Turnpike.
It's stuck. Careful of those chairs. They move all over the room.
Yeah, except when you want them to. So, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, thank you for having us back. Hopefully we can make some progress tonight. My understanding is that since we were here last, that you had some discussions with town council and that she provided some guidance. At this point, it's, at the pleasure of the board, but I think what I would propose is that I simply run through, for the record, the variance criteria on the wellhead protection district, which we didn't cover the last time. And then that's really, I think, going to be the bulk of the rest of our presentation, because everything else was handled the last time.
I think where we ended up at the end of last time, we had started one of the variances. Am I right? We started asking the first, I forget what variance it
How about
was.
if I go get the November meeting minutes?
Yeah, I looked at the November minutes before we came here, and what we did get through, because I've got the verbiage here, is that I got through Article 4, Section B3, which is the expansion of the non-conforming, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah. Correct. Yep.
So all of that was done.
So I think we read the 5 questions there.
Yep,
We were in discussion, but we hadn't voted yet.
correct.
So, does the board want to pick up there, or let the applicant look at residential density, or the wellhead
The
protection
wellhead, yeah.
before we go back?
Just 2 seconds. Yeah, we gotta get organized for a second. There we go. There's your paperwork. All right, so you wish to start, which one, please?
We had left off with Article 4, Section B, about residential density. She's wondering if it'd be cool to just have her give us a brief summary on the wellhead protection. My opinion is just to pick up where we left off and reread those 5 questions, continue that article and vote on that, and then move to wellhead protection next.
Just to make sure I understand, I mean, you want me to reread the variance criteria that were addressed for B3 back in November?
No, you don't have to
Oh,
reread it.
okay.
We had those questions answered.
Right.
But we usually vote per variance.
Sure.
So I would take that vote up.
Okay.
Internal discussion, more questions, just if there is any,
Okay.
vote on that.
And then move on to the
next
next one?
Yep.
Okay, fine.
If I move out of line, I get confused.
read without the, I've got Article 7C, okay, Article 4B and Article, so I'm looking at page 1, is this where you're reading from?
I'm looking at, for your draft minutes from November 26th, I'm looking at the bottom of page 3, which is where I start to address the criteria for the expansion of the non-conforming use. That's the residential density. And that goes through, well, it goes all the way through up to 5.
Go ahead, because I think maybe, Chairman, my notes are the earlier ones, and you have exactly what she's reading from. I don't have a page.
I have. Okay, thanks.
All right, so you want to do residential density.
Well, as I said, I've already addressed those
Right, I just
criteria.
want to find the paper.
Oh, sure. Well,
That's all.
Sure.
I don't have a page 5, so, and page 3, I have maybe the original packet, which shows,
Well, here, do you want to take a look at my minutes? Would that be easier?
just for comparison for a second, see which one we're looking at.
These were sent to me this morning, and
Oh.
these are from the November 26th meeting.
All right, so you're looking over here.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was confused. So because we've asked the 5 questions, she's answered the 5 questions, we have them here so we can look at those again. I think at this point, I don't know that we opened it up to abutters. So are there any abutters present that would like to speak on this variance?
The November one?
Article 4, Section B. Article 4, Section B. So having no hand protection. And residential density. Okay, so this was the 4-acre deal.
So who's starting with?
So we can either, this is our opportunity to ask the applicant a little bit more on this particular variance, or make a motion and then discuss.
So this is the conjoined one that's the residential density with the water, the 4-acre requirement. These are the two that bump into one another, am I correct?
Well, the proposal is for a 4-lot subdivision at the other end of
Right.
the manufactured home park.
Right, I got all that.
And so what we talked about the last time were the Article 7D, which had
Gotcha.
to do with the non-conforming, the expansion of the non-conforming. Article 4,
Yep.
B3, which would be again, the density, hang on just a second, I want to just make sure.
Yeah,
And
there's
then-
several there.
And then Article 6D. So I think what we have left to do is the wellhead protection discussion.
Which is the 6D.
Hang on just a second.
Yeah, 6D is wellhead protection. So
Yeah.
we currently you just finished all the criteria for 4B3,
Yep,
which is the residential density. And
and so now we're moving on to 6,
or did you want any related question on this? Just a quick question? I had just one question on the site review. There's,
is this on the resident, I just want to make sure I understand. So we've gone through the residential criteria, and your question is about the residential density?
the question is about the 4 lots.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. My question is on the 4 lots, the design I'm seeing here. When I did the site walk, and I did, thank you for putting the flags up, there was one section that I believe is part of your property where we have a large runoff, a stream that goes into kind of a deep hole like to go under the road. And I wasn't sure if you could just indicate which lot that's on. I thought it was here. That's it. Okay, all right. So that was my only question there.
And which lot was that? What number?
I'm afraid I don't, it's the second one right here, this one here. This lot sits down by the road, indicating this area here.
Okay, so I think that's going to be 82-2.
Right.
Okay.
So, in terms of residential density and the useful land and all there, I'm just trying to get my mind around the triangular lot here and the odd cut here, knowing you've got that big water source, that's a deep one there. So I'm just trying to get my head around that density insofar as usable land between the ledge, the water coming through there, and the unusual cut here. So I think I'm just working that out in my mind. So I just wanted clarification of which lot the hole was on.
Yeah.
Thank you. And is she going to continue with the next questions, or are we voting on them one by one?
Well, I mean, typically we do one variance at a time.
Okay.
I think, in my opinion, we should button this one up. Motion.
It's could be conjoined to 6D4.
Right.
They kind of are overlapped and from my original the paperwork here, so I don't know if you want to continue them separately or deal with the pair. And that's their choice.
Can I ask a question? My understanding is that town council worked with you on a potential draft decision for this board. Is the draft decision structured in such a way that it deals with both of the variance requests, or does it split them up?
We actually can't discuss what we got from council. However, I'd like to ask Linda, just
Well, basically,
paperwork.
just as I'm sure the attorney knows, the board is free to ask questions regardless of any legal counsel that they received. And I think they're just trying to gather some information before they...
No, I understand. I'm just, in terms of the process, in terms of whether you want to take it one step at a time,
Right,
or...
I see what you're saying.
But I think that's the choice of the board. I think they've all read that
I guess
confidential.
Yeah, I'm reading over in here.
Yeah.
Just wondering.
Yep.
And
Totally got that.
I'm going to interject for just a minute, since some of you have this at the table. I would suggest that you make a motion to make that a non-public document.
I'll make a motion that our council, town council communication is a non-public document.
Second that?
Is there a second? Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion stands. I just didn't know if, for future cases, if we were ever looking back at this or anything to keep them separate, would keep it nice and clean, or?
Well, it certainly does, typically. If the board could, if they felt that the criteria was the same or close to it, or the testimony was close enough, that they were comfortable in combining a decision, but it would have to be very clear in the motion. You're always better off to just motion and vote on one, give your reasons why, and then move on to the next one.
Yeah, okay.
That would certainly be
For the
the applicant's
record.
preference too.
Okay. Okay, so at this point, I think if there's any more questions for the applicant or a motion to get an internal discussion going.
It's been so
Oh,
long.
we're going.
I'm awake. Am I motioning, my motion would be to pass or negate variance on a particular section, correct, at this point, and then a second, and then discussion,
Correct.
and it would be closed discussion.
You got it.
All right, and am I correct, and I am exact on section 4B3?
Correct.
All right, and let me find my wording here, please excuse me. I don't have it. We have the 4B3. I'm sorry, I don't have exact wording here. I only have them listed as the variance in articles. So I will make a motion to accept Article 4B, Section 3. And I do not have a subsection on that. Do you need more for that wording, or can Secretary pull up for?
I think it's C.
I just need a better wording here.
You're making a motion to grant the variance to Article
4.
4B, Section 3.
3.
Yep,
4B3.
that's what you're that's exactly how to word the motion is.
Okay, and I have no subsection beneath nor wording.
That's okay.
Okay, but that's,
Well, you can go with small b, maximum residential density
I think that's the
in
one
the
that most
district.
applies.
of the wellhead protection.
so that's.
Which would be a variance from the 4-acre requirement in a wellhead district. Am I correct?
Yes, I think so.
Actually, I think that's the other one.
That is the other one.
That's
That
the-
is the other one,
That's,
Right.
5D.
4B3 is residential density.
which requires the 4 acres because it is in the wellhead protection.
right, which links to the other. You have a second?
Oh, I didn't, okay. Is there a second?
Oh, a second.
I have a second?
Sure.
Discussion.
I think I'm trying to wrap my head around the separation of the upper wells that supply the mobile home and the ledge that comes down into this property, which essentially creates this lower section that is, for intents and purposes, unrelated to that well structure that's up above. They have provided information that the water quantity is sufficient to sustain the existing homes up there. So in these homes will have their own wells. My problem is looking at the natural runoff off there. I'm worried the plan design, but that is beyond our point of view. I would say that I don't know, anybody else some input here?
I agree with you. I think what stands out about this piece of property and makes it unique is that there's that separation, natural separation, but also there's this man-made separation up above of that area which is dedicated to space for septic and well that the park is not allowed to utilize. So there's almost two levels of separation between the property that they want to build and what exists.
And that separation, which we have in the agreement of the tenants, tenants are not allowed beyond the property beyond the no trespassing sign at the bottom of the Pleasant Lane. Like some way of getting that into the variance, that restriction of use of that wellhead section up on top there be maintained within the variance, that it be a criteria of the, is it criteria the right word? A condition of the variance?
For what is that?
A condition of the variance, that the restriction of use of the property where the wells and septics are for the mobile home park remain, is tied into the variance also. It's in their rental agreement, the tenant agreement.
I don't think, it would be extremely difficult to enforce. I think just the fact that it's functioning now, the layout is there, I don't really see how you could make an operational
Although it is part
condition.
of,
You could make a, you can condition a variance, but it has to be enforceable.
yeah, and see the problem here is that the part of the argument is based upon the non-use by people, residents upon that property, which creates a natural barrier between this development and then the upper property. So this area up here is
Right.
not for use with the most.
Right,
So
but then on the other hand, these would have private wells down here.
correct.
Whereas in the wellhead protection area that you're concerned about is uphill of these lots.
Right, but that natural non-use becomes a barrier to the
Well, I
argument.
don't see how you could make any use of it. I'm not sure what the use could be.
No, you don't want use of it.
No, and I don't think that there would be any, in other words, was your concern that there would be people walking there?
No, just have it that the current rules be maintained.
Well,
She wants it as a condition.
right,
the
well, I know what she
variance.
wants.
To,
I guess you could ask the applicant if they were comfortable to do that voluntarily.
I don't have any problem with
We
that.
have no problem with maintaining those rules in effect
Okay,
during the operation of the manufactured home park.
all right, so we could,
Okay, so you would voluntarily agree to
Yes,
that as part of
yes,
the
yes.
variance? Okay, wonderful.
and and just on a side note, we would need a date or something, some way of referring to this particular set of rules and regulations, that these are the ones you're maintaining. Something like, and it would be in particular,
Well, can you read the particular rule, and then we'll just identify that as,
I've got rule number
Testimony.
27. Tenants are not allowed on the property beyond the no trespassing sign at the bottom of Pheasant Lane. This area is designated for utilities, septic fields, and water wells. And then it goes on with a codicil about the rules are for all. So I don't see a issue date on this that we could make it so that we could say the rules that were
We could say the rules that are in our effect, are in effect as of the date of this decision.
as of the date of this
Right.
decision.
right,
Okay?
Mr. Chairman, just to interrupt, I mean, this is the first step. Hopefully, things go through with the planning board. It's something on the recorded plat. We can also put that language on the recorded plat, that gap section. So it would be there for eternity, also on a recorded plan.
gotcha.
That does ease my concerns a bit. Anybody else? I'll call the vote.
Seeing no further discussion. Pam, how do you vote?
I will vote in favor of this as, I can see how it can be.
Justin?
I go in favor.
I'm in favor. I have nothing to add.
I'm also in favor. Motion passes.
Thank you.
So at this point, we can move on to that next one, which will be very similar. But section 6D4C.
I think is it, I have D, there's too many
Six.
sections here.
Six
Section 6,
D.
D4B, I have.
And I have 6D4C.
Well,
Oh, 6D4B,
let's,
6D4C.
well, they're basically,
Well, it would make a difference in the
one's,
wording.
it really is B,
Uh,
because that's the one that says that they must be
No,
open space, and then it defines in C the actual size of the,
Yeah, C's got the 1/4
so we
unit
could say B
per acre.
and C. D, this one. Mm-hmm.
6D, as in dog? Yes,
Yes.
D as in dog, I have 4,
I'm on page
4, and then little
43
b.
in the yellow
Yeah,
book.
B, I would agree that B is actually more correct than C,
Yes.
although C gets you
I
there.
got both of them, so I could go either way.
Or you could just use big 4 on his own.
Yeah,
B is what requires a need for the variance, the development pattern.
So in this case, rather than rereading the questions, stop me if I'm incorrect here, because it so closely relates to what we just did, the questions that you answered before, we could take those answers and pull them through to these questions if you'd
I
like.
think you can, but what you can also do is in the, I have way too many copies of this. If you remember, I did an application on August 1st, and then I did a supplemental one on, where did that go to? That supplemental application, which if I could find it, has a separate
30th.
section called application for variance from section 6D4B, and that specifically addresses the issues about the wellhead protection district and the impact that this proposal would have or not have on that.
Okay.
So if you want to just, I mean, we can make a representation that we're asking the board to review this document as being our arguments as to why we meet each of those criteria. And then I think the only other issue that's outstanding,
7C.
7C, articles, or section C.
You guys talked about it in October. She answered all the questions.
Non-conforming lot. So those are all done also, already read, October.
I got it from somewhere.
October?
Can we legally stipulate them as read?
I think we can.
She has them in the minutes. You have 7C in the minutes already as read.
Yeah.
And we're talking about 6D 4B.
B.
We're happy with B. And this is from the August 30th. Were these entered into minutes yet?
Obviously.
The 6D 4B? Or do you want her to read them all right now?
Well, I wouldn't put it in the minutes if you didn't talk about them. I mean,
Yeah, we're looking at a different one though. I know you
if it's the
just
same,
found.
I mean, here, you can look at that. That's October. I mean, if it was read during a meeting, then yes, it was, they end
Okay.
up in the minutes, but
If it hasn't been read,
if it
then
hasn't been,
perhaps we should do the reading.
as much as I don't mind if
Right.
you don't, it probably makes more sense to read it into the record.
And as you may vary, which you can, you may choose to do so.
Yeah, I think what I'll do is I'll just summarize it. Bear with me just for a minute. I'm trying to remember. It seems to me that I already did discuss the issue about the development pattern, which is the open space design. But I'm not seeing that here. Oh, here it is, here it is, my apologies. It's in here, so I have addressed both the open space design and, so let me just take this, and then what I'll do, I'll read this, I'll summarize this into the record as being the arguments in support of the grant, that we meet the criteria of section 6D4B, which is the open space and also the density as it pertains to the wellhead issues. So first of all, the variance will not be contrary to the public interest. As was stated before, it has to be, in order for it to be a violation of the public interest, it has to alter the essential character of the locality or threaten the public health, safety, and welfare. With this particular request, we have verified that it's not in the, well, first of all, the property's in the wellhead protection overlay district, but it is not in the aquifer. Instead, it is in the district solely by virtue of the fact that it has a community well on site in order to serve the manufactured home park. Also, the property, as has been mentioned tonight, the portion of the property to be developed into 4 lots is down gradient of the community well. The spirit of the ordinance is observed. Again, the public purpose, public interest, and spirit and intent of the ordinance are really one and the same under the New Hampshire Supreme Court these days. But I would add that the proposed lot design locates the lots as far away as possible from the community well. And by contrast, if this were done in an open space sort of format, simply because of the configuration of an open space design, it would very well might bring the lots closer to the community well, thus defeating the, or coming into conflict with the intent of the ordinance. With regard to substantial justice, the ability to develop these lots will benefit the public, much as we said in earlier versions. And as has been noted earlier today, the proposed subdivision is not going to create a detriment or loss to any individual or member of the public at large. The residents of the manufactured home park are prohibited from using anything other than a designated portion of the lot. Therefore, as has been noted, there's going to be a natural multi-layered buffer between the manufactured home park and then what's happening in the south side. And by having these buffers, it will avoid harm to the community well. The values of the surrounding properties are not diminished, that the proposed use, and this is the same as what was mentioned in the other set of variances, is going to be for single-family residential use, which is consistent with the use in the surrounding properties. And then finally, in terms of hardship, the property does have special circumstances, which has been discussed earlier today, and I think that may be of particular interest in terms of the wellhead protection issue. These 4 lots are in fact down gradient of the community well that makes this, or creates the need for this to become, or be in the wellhead protection district. And then finally, there is no fair and substantial relationship between the purpose of this particular section of the ordinance and the application of it to the property. Again, we are in the wellhead protection district solely because there's a community well system, not because we're in the aquifer. The purpose of the ordinance is to protect the community water system, and the current design that we have in terms of individual wells for the 4 lots will do just that. And the open space requirements would have no logical application to this proposal because, as was mentioned earlier, the implementation of an open design would actually, or could actually, bring the lots much closer to the community well. So those are the criteria that we believe satisfies that section.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant or a motion?
Mr. Chairman, did you open the public hearing again for anybody out there, or is there any abutters? Maybe
There weren't any before, but I checked. Yeah.
No, I know you checked earlier. I didn't know if there were any that might want to respond to a different variance.
I get you. Is there anybody here that would like to speak on this variance that's in the butter?
Questions of the applicant per se? Just looking at the 4 acre and overcoming that with the wellhead and all, still having concerns about the 4 lot design here and about the conformity of size per se, but wondering if zoning also is part of shape, so to speak, or is that the jurisdiction of planning?
That's under the jurisdiction of planning.
Okay.
What you're really looking at is the 4 acres versus the 2 based solely on wellhead.
Okay.
It would be the responsibility of the planning board to determine whether or not they're viable lots based on steep slopes, wetlands,
Okay.
all those other issues.
No problem.
I have a quick question. I think you were the one who was saying about how much extra the current community well is providing for the lots up top. Do you
Yeah.
remember ballpark how much
It was
extra?
thousands of gallons. It'd take me a couple minutes.
Would it be like 10%, 20%?
Oh, it
more?
was more than that.
2
yeah.
wells that produce 38,000 gallons a day, they're only using 6,000 a day?
Yeah, so it's a
Nicely done.
large factor.
I remember.
Thank you.
You got that right off the top of your
Yeah.
You're hired.
Sorry, you can't have it.
Alright, so we're on 6B.
I'd like to make a motion if there's no more questions. I make a motion to approve the variance for Article 6D 4B, that the uniqueness of the property, and because it's not an aquifer but a community well that puts you within the overlay district, the new properties that you're going to be hopefully building are far enough away that there would be no contaminants into that area. It's down farther. There'll be self-sufficient wells and septic systems. I think it does substantial justice to approve this for those reasons, and largely to the uniqueness of the property.
Second.
Can I get a second?
Second.
I have a second. Is there any discussion?
Oh, we kind of covered it with the first one.
Yeah, okay. Seeing no more discussion. Pam, how do you vote?
I will vote in favor.
Justin?
In favor?
Brenda?
Favor.
I'm also in favor. Motion passes.
Thank you very much. We appreciate all of the attention and patience and diligence which the board has applied to
We have
this.
one more to do.
There's two. What about the third?
No.
Do we,
Jeez.
yeah, do we still have, we have section 7C.
7C, yeah,
Okay.
non-conforming lots.
We still have that one.
And this is the one that you did previously
I
read.
think so, yes.
We just didn't vote.
We
That's
just
the
took it
one
out of
from
order.
October.
That's
Yep.
right, okay.
That's the one from October.
Okay.
Why this case has been so
All right, just 2 seconds to find 7C non-conforming. It's over on 48.
And that basically says that no action should be permitted to change the boundary of a non-conforming lot to make it more non-conforming.
Right. So at this point, because they've already read the questions, if there's any questions or comments to the applicant, or a motion. Seeing none of that, I'll make a motion to approve the variance to section 7C1. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a second. Discussion.
Obviously, this is the difficult one to wrap the head around, that you've got nonconformity, that you're making more nonconform. However, just trying to get around the whole ballpark of this, because we've got that buffer, ledge, separation, so to speak, of the upper section from this lower section, it doesn't change what's happening on the upward side.
Right.
So it's not truly changing the nonconformity or lack thereof conformity of the upper part, because it never really was, other than boundary lines within it.
And typically, when you're thinking about making a lot more non-conforming, you're taking a tiny lot and making it really tiny, which would diminish the property values, the look, the character, the safety of that particular area, where this, because of that natural boundary, doesn't do that. Essentially, we're talking about such a large
Right.
span between.
And as public safety comes first, this is not, these 4 lots are not, will not be related to the upper property, because they will have their own driveways, separate entrances, the whole bit. They're on an entirely separate road. So we're not increasing traffic flow onto Route 4. Yeah, again, as much as we have questions that we have to fulfill in the answering of the questions, and while it's right there on the line, the fact of the matter is that substantial justice would be done by granting this variance.
You may have just changed my mind the more you spoke about it, because just the non-conforming, just making it less conforming. It's just, I don't like that whole aspect, but as you were saying, it's almost like two separate lots you're kind of looking at, even though it's one property. The more you talked about it, made a little more sense, because I wasn't in favor at all with this non-conforming. Now that you spoke more of it, I think you're right.
It's like doing something that...
Definitely a tough one, but you made a valid point there. Yeah.
I think just when we look at the town in its entirety, we're adding 4 conforming lots to that horrible ratio that we all think about with all the non-conforming house lots with houses on them. And now we get, hopefully, some 4 new conforming lots with some nice new houses. And, I think it does substantial justice to grant this variance for that reason. And just echoing what you guys said, it doesn't have the negative impact that on its face I felt. And it's very hard for any zoning board, I'm sure, to look at a parcel and to bring it on its face further into non-compliance. It's not what we typically set out to do. But you've done a good job convincing us, and convincing me. I think that 4 new house lots is a good thing for that area.
Yeah, I think too that the natural landscape, having that downslope that separates the two. If it was a flat piece of property, it'd be a whole different discussion.
Absolutely.
But yep. Any more discussion? No.
Just make sure that we add into each variance, or all this particular variance, so we do it once, we're covered, that the Park, Northwood Mountain View Development LLC Park rules and regulations effective on the date of January 28th, 2019 will apply in the future.
Yep.
So somehow amend the motion to have that attached to it.
Mm-hmm.
By
As a
agr- by
condition of
agreement.
operation
What was the
By
date on that?
agreement, okay.
of the mobile home park.
Yeah. Is
I
that?
thought there was a date on it.
They're willing to go with it. I
There is
don't-
no date on it, but they stipulated the rules that are in effect as of
Right.
today, currently today.
Right.
And in particular, that was Rule 27. Or, well, Rule,
It's 27, yeah, I think
okay,
you're
it's right below that,
At the bottom
27.
of the page.
Essentially, Rule 27, tenants are not allowed on the property beyond the no trespassing sign at the bottom of Pheasant Lane. This area is designated for utilities, septic fields, and water wells.
And for the record, they did also note that they would designate that on the subdivision plan.
Thank you. Please add that in.
Without any
Call the vote.
call the vote, Pam, how do you vote?
I will vote in favor of the variance, section 7C1, with stipulation, with conditions.
Justin?
I vote in favor.
In favor.
I'm also in favor.
Can I say thank you now?
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your patience.
Thank you. This was a tough one, I know.
Yeah, thank you for your patience.
All right, moving on. We have case 18-10, Casey Perrington. And before we get into this case, I'm going to turn the meeting over to Vice Chair Pam Sanderson. Well, I recuse myself. That's all I got.
Am I okay here, or do I need to go down there?
You're okay, if you're
I'm okay here.
comfortable.
To go out in public.
I would suggest the first order of business is to ask the applicant if they are comfortable going forward with 3 voting members,
Okay,
with the knowledge that all 3 would need to vote in the affirmative for a motion to pass.
all right.
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, so we have asked the applicant if they are good with going forward with 3 members of the board and understanding it takes a unanimous decision, and they have affirmed. So we are dealing with a variance, Article 7C, once again, non-conforming lot. And 2 seconds while I pull second file together. Thank you. And for brevity, this new packet that you've given, is this new material or a repeat of material we've had?
It's just more information that I have, but not necessarily relevant, specific to the zoning,
You need a variance for
but something I
reference.
may mention.
Town ordinance articles, that's 6B11 for all information. All right, so that's just the variance process. Big Acorn Pond. Do we have any designation of Big Acorn Pond?
Right here, the back of the lot.
It's on the back of the, okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, if I could also acknowledge that Mr. Fred Borman is in the audience, and
Okay.
he is in the back corner there, and he is here representing the Conservation Commission.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, so we've got a note here from Bear Paw Regional Greenways, which is independent organization, I believe. Bear
Pardon?
Paw Regional Greenways, is that an independent organization?
Yes, it
That's
is.
not a town
It's a
affiliated?
nonprofit,
Thank you.
private organization.
Back lot, back land. These are, okay, other town support. Got a survey proposal, conservation easement. Two property corners will be published on the plan. Electronic images of boundary and pond will be provided for future publishing. Easement lines will be blazed and painted, iron pins, Mylar plan. Again, that's the front. Can you give me an estimated acreage on that conservation easement?
Up to 25 acres, so over half the lot.
Up to 25. These. All right, do you wish to start with a brief summary of what it is you're doing?
Yes.
Or plan to do?
So my name's Casey Parrington.
Pull up the microphone, please. Either one or two up there.
My name's Casey Parrington, and this is my father-in-law, Victor May. We both reside at 346 First New Hampshire Turnpike, and that's the property we are talking about tonight. It's on map 230, lot 9. And we're here tonight because we're hoping to subdivide the 44-acre lot into 2 lots so that my wife and I can build a house behind Victor. So we applied for a building permit and we need the road frontage variance. So that's why we're here tonight. The way I designed the subdivision was to subdivide the lot 239 into a 5-acre lot, and then the second lot, lot 239-1, would be a 39-acre lot. And in researching around different ordinances in different towns, I came across a common theme that have backlot provisions within the ordinance. So at the front of the lot, I left the main lot, lot 239, which was originally 144.21 feet. I brought it down to 125 feet. So I would be asking for, or we would be asking for a 25-foot variance. And then I left the new lot with 19.21 feet. And that was in line with a couple, what I handed out, a couple ordinances that I found across the state. First one was in Hollis. They define backlots as lots that have reduced minimum frontage requirement, but have a greater minimum lot size requirement. And then they go on to say, when talking about backlots, that they have to have a minimum of 20 feet must be provided for each backlot. And then also in Nottingham, same thing. Lot created must have 20 feet of road frontage and a minimum of 2 acres. So that's kind of, if you were curious, how we came up with that design. Also, there's a right-of-way out back lane, which is right here, running down the middle of the current lot. And that provides access to lot 237, who has a house back there. He also has his own driveway right here out to Route 4. So we didn't want to split the lot right down the middle and have the right-of-way on both lots. So the right-of-way would stay on the current lot with the 5 acres with 1 house on it, and the second lot with 39 acres would have the smaller road frontage, and the house would be towards the back. In proposing this, we did, so we have 3 access points right now on Route 4. You can see them right here. One's on the west side, the left side of the house. One is the right-of-way of back lane, and the third one is on the east side. We did say in our application that we'd be willing to eliminate 2 of those access points because we plan on using out back lane as access and as our driveway to our building area. And that was in line with the town's master plan of limiting access points to Route 4. So we'd be eliminating 2 access points, creating no new access points because we would be using out back lane to get to the back, which is right here. And then also we offered up to 25 acres for conservation easement to whoever would accept it. Either the Conservation Commission in Northwood or Bear Paw Regional Greenways said they would be willing to support it. We asked that the fees, we would donate the land if they would pay the fees in putting it into conservation, which was that quote that I handed out to you from the surveyor. So that is the gist of the project.
So, okay. Pardon me. Any general questions from the board before we go to the abutters?
So you're splitting the whole parcel, and then the new parcel would be 19 feet of road frontage you would have? Am I on the right track?
Yep.
You'd go down to 125 on the old parcel, and then you'd have 19 for the new parcel?
Yeah, so
Okay.
I designed it like I said the other towns had,
Yep.
for back lots.
Sure.
19.21 would be the back lot.
Mm-hmm.
And also, in reading on the other towns, that, what they call the panhandle, the front of the lot, they exclude that from, or they exempt it from the minimum width of lots to get that back lot in. So really, we have the land, we just don't have the frontage. We did look into other options. We seriously looked at the, what was it called? The accessory dwelling units. But then looking into it, we'd have to ask for variance to do a detached accessory dwelling unit, because Northwood has to be attached. We'd have to ask for the variance to have a house larger than 1,000 square feet, because that's a requirement. And the list just keeps going on and on. So this was the minimum variance required for us to be able to build a house. We did, I also approached the neighbors to try to get road frontage, but that didn't work out being an option for us. The neighbor right next door, lot 23010, which you don't have, but I can pass around this quickly. I highlighted it. It's a 1 acre lot.
Anything that you're handing out, we need a copy of for the
Okay.
record, as well as this, if you're entering that into the, can you leave that with us?
Yeah, well, that's handed out here. It's just different sizes.
Okay.
All right, this is just like from a town tax
Yeah,
map.
just to
And I'm
show.
looking at the person next to you,
Yeah, lot, yeah.
10, whatever.
So it's a 1 acre lot. They have over 310 feet of road frontage. So that's a non-conforming lot. It can't be subdivided, but it has the buffer there to meet that requirement. So if you, I mean, if you were to drive down the road, if you added up the 144 feet that this lot has, lot 239, and if you add lot 10 to that, it works out to 454 feet. So if this was approved, there would be 3 houses on a total of 454 feet, or 150 feet per house. I just wanted to note that. It's not our road frontage, but
Right.
to the town, to the public,
Right.
driving by, it's not. it's
Yeah,
a
again,
non-conforming lot.
his frontage is not yours.
Right.
So, as far as, before I go into the abutter, my general point is, thank you for gathering the other town information. We are bound to Northwood. So right there, I've got it here to that. So we're looking at a town ordinance general district of 150-foot frontage. You're already in nonconformity at 144. You would like to go to 125 and put on this 19.1 feet, 19.21 feet onto Route 4. That would no longer be a driveway, or it would remain a gravel easement.
It would no longer be a driveway.
It would no longer be a driveway. So it's separated for what purpose?
For the road frontage, to be able to get that road frontage, to have the. building lot.
For your back lot to have the road frontage?
You have to have road frontage to be able to to be able to build a house.
19.21 feet on Route 4.
With no additional access point. We'd be removing that access point.
Moving
two access points.
and cutting down to 125. There's no rule about I don't know how it works, where the driveway that is like where we have two homes that use the same driveway. Is there a phrase for that?
Well, yeah, well, shared driveway.
Share of
but
driveway.
There's a lot of things that are in this that, the only thing you're granting is ability to have less than 150 feet of frontage by having 19.
Right.
However, the planning board still has to do a subdivision, and they may say that they don't approve that odd-shaped lot. They could also say a number of things that they would not approve the subdivision.
Right.
It does not meet our subdivision requirements as it's shown here for a number of reasons.
So we would have a deeded right of way on our deed over Victor and Michelle's lot. So this goes on their lot. This yellow or green, this would be the 5-acre lot, and we'd have a deeded access right away to our driveway, and then we would go onto our land.
And that would be contingent on DOT allowing a third property to be accessed through that driveway, because they control access off of the state highway.
Right.
I was
And
planning on, if I can talk, applying for a driveway off of Outback Lane, where the abutter here, he has his own driveway, but his address is 31 Outback Lane with a driveway off of Outback Lane. So that's what my plan was to.
so explain that
Well,
Outback Lane is
We don't
private?
have that. We don't have that driveway easement.
You have no driveway easement. Is it a private road, Outback Lane?
Well, it is,
Frontage on Outback
Outback Lane is a private driveway that goes out to the abutter's lot.
Okay.
These folks granted a driveway easement, and it actually is delineated by meets and bound description on a subdivision plat, as shown here, that goes over to the abutting property. After that residence was built, this is my understanding, he later gained a different access to Route 4. But that does not mean he's relinquishing the right that he has by deed to go over Outback Lane,
Okay, so these people.
unless he extinguishes that deed, easement. But that belongs to the person next door.
But there is an easement.
Yes,
On
there's
record.
not only an easement, there's actually it's delineated on a recorded plat where it is. And the other thing is that it would also, for that, for example, for the subdivision, the planning board would have to approve that they could have another easement to go over that original lot, and because you have to show a driveway access for a new lot. I mean, there's a number of things that the planning board would be looking at that this does not right now meet.
Okay. So,
That Outback Lane, is that the name? That's merely a driveway, right?
The reason it's called Outback Lane is because any driveway that's over a certain amount of feet has to be a named for
Right.
911 for emergency
Right.
services. So otherwise, no one would know where that resident was
Right.
out there, out back.
Right.
now, we don't have a certified plot plan on this that would show all of
Not-
these
not-
things?
So I drew this. There's a plot plan for the 44-acre lot, but not the division here.
So that's an older, so we really don't have any set,
No, I mean, if, I was
When-
waiting to get approval to have the surveyor draw.
And we're kind of in a situation where we might need something of hard drawn, official, before we've got enough information to move
Well-
forward. The issue of entrance to Route 4 is substantial. There can be no greater thing that we do than public safety. And for your safety and everybody else getting onto Route 4 and Route 4 itself. So I think right off the bat to have what we're talking about down front there and getting a grasp on that 19.21 and its purpose. And the purpose of the 19.21 is simply to provide a little bit of access onto Route 4 frontage, which can never ever be used because nobody's ever going to put a driveway with 19.21 inches onto Route
Wait.
4.
So
Right.
you'd have a house with,
Yeah,
We can't subdivide
So-
it without the frontage, yeah.
you can't subdivide it up frontage, but the easement to out back doesn't qualify because it's got entrance, so, and a joint driveway would not, boy.
So it would be, I don't know if I can freely speak, but we would be making the lot, yes, more non-conforming, going down to the 125 feet, but more conforming with eliminating 2 of the 3 access points.
Well, we don't know what DOT will agree to. That's an unknown at this point. I mean, yes, they can say, we're gonna close off those driveways. I'm sure DOT isn't gonna be concerned, but, as far as those issues, your focus is really on whether you feel that, 19 point, whatever they said,
2-1.
is adequate frontage for a lot. The other reason that they need to have some frontage is there's a state statute, 674-41, which I think we've wrestled with before, requires that no building permit is issued unless there is frontage on Class 5 or state road, and by putting 19 feet out there, they are, in essence, gaining an
toehold.
exemption from that state law.
There's
They
also
would
a
be-
reason for that.
They would be
statement, too.
exempt.
Hmm.
That's my understanding. Whereas if they came in and said, we know we have 144 feet where 150 is required, we want to have a shared driveway, we want 0 frontage, it's all going to be backland, and have a deeded right to get back there, they would have a problem with the state law because they would have no frontage.
Okay. Any other preliminary questions?
No, I'm all set.
All right. Any abutters present? Or people of interest? Yes, sir.
I just want to make one more comment. That we could, I mean, another option that we looked at, although it wasn't our first option, was to upgrade Outback Lane into a road. If we were to do that, or future owners could do that and put in multiple building lots. So in our offer, we're offering to give up future potential for building lots by putting over half the land in conservation. So we want to just build one house, but there is potential, there could be multiple houses on that 44-acre lot. With approval, of course.
Yeah, and that's not,
So here's my bottom line, right?
okay.
My bottom line is, you talk about public safety, and I get that, right?
Yes.
They already live there.
Right.
I'm not causing any more traffic to go on to Route 4 than what we already have. The issue becomes really space as the family grows and the 3 kids. And it's a lot of property. So the issue of looking to build out back. So we're not, again, I'm not sitting here saying, oh, I'm worried about public safety. I'm worried about public safety, but at the same time, there is no more traffic than what we already have. So I guess that's my point when we talk about safety. And I think he did a good job when you come about addressing the 5 questions that you guys put into place for a reason. My bottom line is to have the family close and to be able to have a house on that same amount of property, so without violating anything.
No,
obviously.
certainly
So,
respect that, and our bottom line is simply do what's best for Northwood and public safety and all the other issues, so we're willing to work on it. Go ahead.
Just to be clear on a couple of items.
Sure.
I just mentioned as far as that testimony, that just to remind the board that you have to look at this, excuse me, you have to take out any issues of personalities, who's there today, because both of them, let's say that this was approved, there were 2 homes there, they could be sold to 2 other people. You have to look at it and take the people and the personalities and the families out of it. It could essentially be 2 separate properties that could be developed with different folks in it. But I just wanted to go back to what Casey was saying as a point of clarification, so I understood what he was saying. So you're saying that you're going to restrict the property to the one back lot with the conservation easement on it? That there would be no, you were saying you were giving up
essentially,
development rights, so.
As I understand it, any land that you put in conservation easement, you're giving up all development rights.
Right, but you were talking about putting a road in and putting in more lots.
Well, no, so
You
that's
could
not what
still do that.
We don't want to do that.
So that's not giving up any development rights.
Well, it is, because you're minimizing, we'd be giving up over half our lot, so we'd be down to 20 acres.
Well, under our
15.
current zoning ordinance, I'm saying this for the board, so they're aware, that area in the conservation overlay district that the area that you're proposing to put into a conservation easement is not developable land. So you're not actually giving up, because you can only go 1,000 feet in. And you're probably already at that point or near to it when you get up to where your home is. So,
900.
as far as the zoning ordinance, that would not, would not be giving up any development rights.
Could that change in the future if the planning board did a new master plan to remove that requirement?
We don't know what the future could be. They could,
Right.
they could make
So
10-acre minimum lots or
Right.
half-acre minimum lots.
But that's my
I mean, we
point.
don't
In the
know.
future, that could change, just like we could move and sell. If
Right.
someone removed that requirement, there could be a road going all the way through Stratford, and then there could be.
Right.
So, I mean, we would, that 25 acres, or 20 to 25 acres in conservation easement, that could never be developed.
The likelihood of development of that type becoming less restrictive is less unlikely than it would become more restrictive, but I mean,
That's
who
true.
knows what the future holds. You're right. When there's enough development pressure, eventually, whether it's 10 years or 50 years, but Northwood has never had backlots development, such as, some of these ones you're proposing.
And then the 150 feet requirement, that was approved by the residents of Northwood, and you guys are supposed to enforce that, I get that. But I feel like if I was speaking to the town of Northwood, explaining to them that there wouldn't be 3 houses on less than 150 feet, though we don't own that place next door, it's not subdividable, so there's not going to be another house there. So there is a natural buffer built in, protected by the zoning ordinance. There's no additional driveways, no more curb cuts to Route 4. I haven't spoken to the state regarding that, but I can imagine they would be in favor of no additional curb cut, shared driveway, removing 2 access points. So I'm not worried about that. But we do have to have some road frontage to be able to get the building permit. We could split it down the middle, like I said, and do 75 feet, but then it just gets a little sticky with putting the right of way on 2 driveways, just doesn't make sense. So just designing it for the 20 feet or 19.21 to have access and road frontage to be able to build.
Any other general questions? General question? Let me just ask, are there any abutters present? No, I already did that with that. At this point in time, we're raised with the question of the board questioning the applicants. We've kind of already done that. Any other questions here? We could close the, can't close the public, we don't have a motion yet.
No, you need to go through the 5 questions.
I need to go through the 5 questions.
And so it's on the record.
I just have a quick question in reading through the things that you submitted when you were talking about other options. What private road are you referring to? Is that driveway?
That's out back. Outback Road is at the back of the property. It's an easement. I don't, maybe if you stood to the map and pointed to where that easement is for Outback Road, or how about up on the map on your big plot plan?
Right here.
That's
It's the center.
yeah. That's your Route 4. Where's your non-existing easement to Outback?
So our deeded easement would start at Route 4 on the driveway and go all the way back. It goes all the way back now.
So Outback is somewhere off to the upper right on your drawing?
Outback Lane starts right at Route 4.
It does.
And then it's 750 feet to the back.
And I thought it was an abutter that was using Outback.
He has access over the land owned by Victor.
And he would be keeping that access,
We would also have access over the deeded. We'd have deeded access.
right, so your abutter would have access over your driveway if you're consolidating the driveways?
He does now.
He has it now.
So he has it now. He has deeded access here. That's how he built his house. But he also has access here. He has his own driveway on Route 4.
Right, and you also have access through his,
No, not through here. That's his own land. He drives over Victor and Michelle's land. That's how we used to get in and out of the property.
right, and you'd be eliminating that existing gravel to the left?
It's tough to you can't see it on this one, but up front there's an existing gravel driveway here on the west side, and then here on the east side. We'd stop using those.
All right. Let me do PC attached.
Is Victor's house the red house in that top picture? Yep, that one. Okay.
And our only other thought with the conservation was if the Conservation Commission held the easement in the future, if the village district town wells were to dry up and they needed to go down the hill more east to have more wells, that they could potentially have access to more land. I don't fully understand how that works, but if the Conservation Commission held the easement, if we don't the easement to them, they may have access to that land in the future if needed.
Does that make sense? Or-
No.
Is that,
No, I'm not
and
understanding.
again, that's way out in the back of the property.
Right.
So I contend that without a certified plot plan or whatever, I'm unsure of making a call on this hand drawing. This plan here is from 2003, so I don't, I'm just concerned about not having enough information in front of me at this point in time. If you'd like to move on, that's fine, or give you the option to continue for more information.
There's only so much road frontage in the front, so, I mean, I've spoke to several surveyors, and there's only so many ways you could do it. So if we're looking at the front, I'd rather just continue. I mean, they could cut it in the middle, you can cut it on that side, you can cut it there. So either way, we're gonna be asking for relief from the variance on the road frontage. So I mean, even if I spent the money to have it surveyed, it doesn't, there's only so many rectangular options they have to do it.
All right, so you're asking me to split hairs, and you're not giving me the magnifying glass to do so.
Well, I mean, all the road frontage is there. We could split it different ways.
Yeah,
But
I mean,
if I had a surveyor draw up 3 different options,
no, just a certified plot plan doesn't necessarily have all the options, and I mean, you're not doing a development. This is a hand drawing, right? Or a line drawing? So you're asking me to make a major decision on frontage without, am I saying it correctly? That,
oh no, I get what you're saying, because it's a big decision, but
and then this again is from 2005.
the road frontage
Still, the
isn't-
numbers are gonna be the same
Still,
regardless of
well,
what
the
the
numbers
drawing
should
is.
be the
There's
same.
another issue here,
There's
is
another-
that nobody can write over the top of copyrighted plans.
Well, I got permission from
You do have
Warmel.
permission.
He
Oh,
said
okay,
it's public
perfect.
record, do what you want with it,
Perfect. Okay.
and he does not get
For
hired.
purposes of this. Pardon?
Yeah, no matter how we look at it, he's gonna have to come to us
Uh,
for road frontage.
Right.
Anyways, so by the sounds of it, he's saying this is the best option he's looking at, and I understand where you're coming from in regards to, we don't have anything like that from a licensed surveyor.
Yeah, yeah,
Saying
yeah.
this is how he's doing it. But what I'm getting from it, and correct me if I'm wrong, that this is the best plan that you want to do because of that road, because of that deeded right away
Right.
to
I mean,
the property.
I've spoken to a surveyor, and this is exactly how he said to do it. Go with a backlot provision. Of course, he wasn't from Northwood.
No, we don't have one, so.
And on the,
Yeah, you can't change the frontage, so I would suggest you go through the 5 questions,
okay.
because basically he has to convince you that by only having 19 feet where 150 is required, that you feel he's met the requirements that the state sets out for you to decide whether or not a variance should be granted. I don't think that the rest of what's going on is going to have to be wrestled by the planning board.
Okay.
Whether or not they would ever accept what happens up here where that stone wall comes in even, I don't know, if it's a couple of feet, I don't know.
I mean, so
If they decide they don't like that lot configuration, they can deny it based on their own regulations. He's still going to have to get a driveway permit from the state and meet all I think focusing on the fact that he's made that decision, he wants to go forward with that amount of feet.
Okay. So we'll go on to the 5 questions. Granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest because,
The public voted in this zoning ordinance because they do not want to see overcrowding on the streets and to maintain the character of the town. Adding a single-family house at the back of our 44-acre lot in no way affects the road frontage appearance. Our 44-acre lot has 144.21 feet of road frontage. Our neighbor's lot, 23010, have a 1-acre lot with 310 feet of road frontage on Route 4. The total length of road frontage between the lots is 454 feet. We believe the combined frontage should be taken into consideration. With approval, there would be 3 houses on a total of 454 feet, or 151 per house. Also, the new lot would be at the back of our land, and we would utilize the same driveway as the current lot. Furthermore, we currently have 3 existing access points on the Route 4. We are willing to give up 2 of the 3 access points on the road. This would reduce confusion to motorists, as traffic entering and exiting the driveway would be doing so from 1 access point. This would also be in line with the town's master plan goal of limited access points on Route 4. There would be no change to the appearance of the road frontage. There would be no additional driveways, access points created, 2 will be removed, and the home would not be visible from the road, and it would protect from the chance of high density development in the future. And then I did go on to say that hypothetically, you know, if we sold out, someone could rip down the farmhouse on the front, put a road down the middle, and put multiple house lots in to justify the cost of the road. And in that scenario, it wouldn't be contrary to the public's interest. It would be in line with the zoning ordinance, yet I don't think it is as wise use of the land as the one single-family house that we're proposing. And like I said before, the road frontage variance we're requesting is the minimum variance that will make possible the building of a single-family home on the back of the 44-acre property.
I lost you because you are you ready for number 2?
Yeah.
The use is not contrary to the spirit of the ordinance because
The spirit of the ordinance is to protect the public's interest, to maintain the rural character of the community. Since the house would not be visible from the road and no new driveways will be needed, the public would not see a change to the property. The intent of the ordinance is to maintain the rural character of the community. Granting this variance would have no visual impairment on the community. The public would not see a change to the property.
Okay. Number 3, granting the variance would do substantial justice because
the property has potential for much higher density development, substantially changing the character of the neighborhood. Granting the variance would allow for the appropriate development and use of land in line with the original spirit of the ordinance. And then I did mention that we have support from Bear Paw Regional Greenways to put Big Acorn Pond and up to 25 acres in conservation easement, again, giving up development rights to that area. And then that also protects the water supply to the Ridge Water District, protects 2 of the 3 aquifers in town, protects the Lamprey River watershed, and protects a high-density wildlife environment.
Number 4, the proposed use would not diminish surrounding property values because
Surrounding property values would not be diminished because some of the land would be put into conservation. There would be a new construction home which will increase the value and comparison rates of surrounding properties.
All right, you don't want to do the second part. Number 5, literal enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance would result in an unnecessary hardship. Use A or B, and it says the special conditions of this property that distinguish it from other properties in the areas are as follows.
kind of grouped these ones together because I wasn't sure exactly what to put, but, so the property consists of 44 acres, while zoning only requires 2 acres. The property has limited road frontage, which would require the road to be constructed for further development, in which case the owners would be required to develop numerous building lots to justify the cost of the road. The road frontage variance we are requesting is a minimum variance that will make possible the building of a single-family home on our 44-acre property. Our property abuts conservation land owned by, I believe, the town and the Northwood Ridge Water District, and there's also some other conservation land, I believe, that's in there. The Ridge Water District wells are located on that property. We are working and have support from, we were working with Northwood Conservation Commission, and we have support from Bear Paw Regional Greenways on donating that land into conservation easement. And like I said, there's many local and regional benefits to conserving that area of land. Also, our neighbor has the 310 feet of road frontage, which provides that natural buffer, which is what I think the town was looking for when they voted in the road frontage requirement of the 150 feet. That's not going to change. If we build a single-family home on that 44 acres, there will be 3 houses on a total of 151.4 feet. That frontage would be in line with the ordinance, maintaining the rural character of the neighborhood. Enforcing this ordinance does nothing to preserve the character of the town, nor does it negatively impact the public or our neighbors. Granting the variance preserves a significant portion of the property, which is a goal stated in the town of Northwood's master plan, and allows the owners to responsibly develop the property within the family. Granting the use will allow for the construction of a single-family home on the property and restricts the potential of a future housing development.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes, ma'am?
I'd like to clarify just a couple of things for the record before you go into your deliberations. There is written testimony that was not read.
Okay.
I suggest that you ask the applicant if this written testimony, which was submitted, which would have been what an abutter would have seen had someone come in to view it, that whether or not that is still valid what was submitted.
All right, so you're talking about the full,
The
3
concern
pages, 4
is
pages.
that it does state very specifically, he's basing some of his argument on both the village at Northwood Ridge wells and an easement to be donated, conservation easement. We do not have any anything in the record from either of those organizations, but Mr. Borman is here. He has been appointed by the Conservation Commission, and I would suggest you give him the opportunity to speak before you get into the motion.
I had asked for any public or other related comments. Do you wish to now, or?
Sure, just briefly.
You need a mic, though. You're
Yeah,
gonna need a
so
mic.
go ahead and take a seat right up here.
My name is.
Turn the button. Just sit right in the chair, you'll be fine. It's comfy.
My name is Fred Borman. I'm a member of the Conservation Commission. I am also a licensed forester, number 418 in the state of New Hampshire. Grace Levergood and I walked the property back in November with Mr. May and Mr. Purinton. And from a conservation standpoint, we have no issue with the building of a house where it's been projected. Big Acorn Pond is approximately 2,000 feet north of where the proposed house is going to be. And so from a conservation value, we saw no degradation in allowing the house to be built. As far as the conservation easement is concerned, we still have some negotiation to go with Mr. Puritan and Mr. May. And my personal feeling is that should not be part and parcel to the approval of the variance or the road frontage. It's strictly the protection of the land, how many acres, what it's going to cost as far as surveys and title searches and things like that, and working with the surveyor, who I believe is not currently in town, Mr. Wormel. But other than that, from a conservation standpoint, we have no issue with adding another house to the existing lot.
Good, thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah, just because it's been raised, I understand that they're really separate issues, but what is the potential for Big Acorn Pond being developed?
Well, from the southern end of the pond to the northern boundary, as Linda said, that part of the property is pretty undevelopable anyway.
Right.
Big Acorn Pond extends beyond the north-south boundaries on both sides, so you couldn't access the acreage on top of the Big Acorn Pond.
Gotcha.
At present,
Parcel,
you know,
right.
yeah.
Okay.
So, does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I did a little mapping after our last meeting, and it's approximately from the northern boundary to the southern edge of Big Acorn Pond is about 18.9 acres. And in our discussions with the landowners is we're negotiating between 20 and 25. Me being a conservationist, I'd be looking for the most acreage we could get, but the house is at least 2,000 feet. Projected house is 2,000 feet from the base of the pond anyway. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, does that suffice for the information that was not in there?
Yes, so I think the board has to decide at this point if the conservation easement is to be understood to be a basis of the approval,
Variance.
then you would need to include it.
Correct.
If you, otherwise, you need to look at it solely without that information and base it on whether the rest of the information for 19 feet, whether he has satisfied those 5 questions for those
Correct.
requirements.
So then that does raise the question, is the easement contingent on, is it a quid pro quo situation? You let me build this house and we'll put this property in a conservation easement?
Well, he can't really do that.
I know you can't.
So if we couldn't build, is your question, if we couldn't build, would we still
Right.
put it in conservation? Maybe sometime in the future, but not immediately.
And again, to be clear, you're talking about building a house. You have to take
Right.
that right out of the,
Yeah.
that's somebody else's authority.
Yeah. Right.
What you're looking at is you're creating a new lot
19.
where a zoning ordinance requires 150
50
feet, and they're offering 19.
And
The
going
planning
down to
board will
more.
determine whether the lot is viable, they'll determine whether or not he can build or have a building lot there. All of that's,
Right. not
but
a
you have to
problem.
look at
Right.
these 5 issues separate and whether or not he has satisfied those conditions.
Right, so we are at the point right now where you have read the 5 questions. We can do one of 2 things. We could entertain a motion, go into deliberations and vote, or we could perhaps consider or talk about a continuation for a look at a little more data and research on this. Some of this is new, some of the information is new. There is some question as to taking nonconformity of the 125-foot frontage, which you currently have 144.21, which is really close, it's there. But creating two non-conforming lots with 125 and 19.21. The 125 is, you're giving up two driveways, it's becoming one, not so bad, but the 19.21, when we look at the actual variance, is frontage is required to ensure safe access to each property for the property owner, emergency vehicles, delivery vehicles, and other visitors. So something about this joint driveway would have to be some contingency in there. I don't know if you could split a driveway in half. Is it possible? I don't.
Well,
So I wanted
again,
time to
the
more.
planning board could say, there's already two residences using it. We don't accept this lot with a third residence going to it.
Right.
For whatever, for safety reasons. Or they could require that driveway be widened to the full, and require bonding, require a whole variety of things.
Right.
Once he gets to that point.
Right.
But so there's a lot of what ifs out
There's a lot of
there.
what ifs of others, or
Right,
that
and
are
whether
not
the state
pertain
of
to
New
us.
Hampshire would approve the increase in traffic for
Right.
another residence from that one driveway.
And I'm just curious
All of
whether
those are,
the board
we don't have
feels
the
that it.
answers to.
Well, I'm just feeling, does the board feel that they have enough information in front of them, or that they have had time to study and look at the background data to move forward with the vote this evening? If not, we could ask if they would be interested in continuance, so we have time to.
And you can also consider a site walk if you want to actually be out there in the field and see how it feels.
Yeah, have you viewed?
Could I say one thing?
Sure.
The one thing I just thought of is, so the accessory dwelling unit, that's a right?
Mm-hmm.
So if we were to apply for a detached accessory dwelling unit, built it on the side of their house, we could apply, get that, move in to the town. It's visible, it disrupts the front of the property, and no traffic is changing. Does that make sense? So if
No.
I could,
You're giving me more what ifs.
I could apply for a building permit tomorrow for an accessory dwelling unit. It's a
You're
right.
on the verge of voting on this.
I know,
Do
I'm
you
just-
really want to bring more?
No, my point is for the traffic. We could move in there in 3 months, build on that house, legally it's within our right, and the traffic wouldn't change. We would be there. Anyone could do that to their house right now. Add on another living area. If you're concerned about the traffic.
But the traffic is not their concern, the frontage is.
The frontage, that's all I'm looking at here.
If he wants to reconsider a potential of, he can put this on hold. For now, he could ask for a month or 2 months, go back and talk to DOT, see if they would allow another on the same lot, or to have, and then come back and he could change his variance to a accessory dwelling unit meeting all the criteria of that, except it's detached. He could build one now as long as the state would, because they're the permitting agency, allow the driveway to have the additional, because it's already got another residence
Right.
using that driveway, which kind of complicates things a little bit. But by right, they could put an attached accessory dwelling unit to the Mays house with all these criteria that they have to meet. It has to look like part of the house, blah, blah, blah. Now, they could come into the town and ask for, we want that, but we want it kind of away from there a little bit. They still need a variance to that, for the detached portion of the accessory dwelling unit. But they could pursue looking at, if it's their desire, they could pursue contacting the state of New Hampshire and getting some sense from them, from DOT, and maybe have a better look at what their options are on this lot. If that's what they're looking to do, I wouldn't suggest that I'd continue.
I would suggest allowing some time. In this, I cannot advise you in what to do. I would suggest in allowing some time on our behalf to look into our books, regulations, and get our mind around the 19.2 and the 125. And I would suggest that you share this time to also look. If we go forward right now, we may not be in a situation where we have adequate information to vote. And the vote, if taken, I can't speak for what's going on. So the idea is, do you want to take a little time, like to the next meeting or maybe 2 meetings, just to allow time for other considerations? The administrator has given and talked about many other options there.
No, and I've researched all the options. I know
Yeah,
what
he's
they are.
been looking at
So
it.
I mean, I'd like to request a vote if you wouldn't mind.
So just so for an understanding, if they vote on this, and then you could not come back necessarily, I mean, you could appeal their vote if it's not in your favor, but
That's a normal process. So if it has to be
the zoning
unanimous,
board is not required to hear a case over again.
and it has to be unanimous, and I'm saying on my behalf, I'd like some time to look. If the vote was to go in favor, then hey, great. If it was to go against, then the door's locked, essentially, with the exception of appeal. So it's in best interest, perhaps, to continue.
And I'm going to talk just to the board now.
Sure.
He does not have to give you permission for you to decide. You can do that yourself. You can vote to continue because you're not ready to vote, if that's how you feel. If you want more time, if you want to look at it more, if you want to go back over and look at his answers and deliberate next month, you can do that.
Okay, so we can take that off you. Is anybody else feeling that they would like to look at more information and pursue this with our regulations and all a little further?
We can. I mean, the way I look at it, it's clear cut. It's 19.221 feet. He's asking for that variance. Just the way I look at it, I'm looking at that. I'm not looking at potential,
Any of the
making,
other
I'm not looking at anything else everybody's talking about here. It's 19.21 feet we're looking at. If we, I'm not saying we are, but let's say if we deny him, he comes back and wants to do accessory dwelling, gets a variance for that, great. But I look at it, it's just that 19.21 feet we're looking at.
This would be creating a non-conforming.
From what I see,
Further non-conforming.
I can vote tonight,
Additional.
but I don't know how you guys are feeling. If you guys need more time, then we can get more time, that's fine.
I'm ready to vote, but
You're ready to vote?
yes. But if you need more time.
Yeah, I mean, if you need
All
more
right,
time.
we've read the, we've read the thing. And now you're feeling,
I mean, like I said, it is what it is on the road frontage, and I've researched the other options. So I mean, if you researched them, there'd be other options that we could look at. But this is the best scenario, I think, for the town, for us.
So this stops the process. If they were to vote, they vote no. It stops the process of getting a variance
For that,
for the driveways as it is.
then you move to your plan
No, it's
B.
got nothing to do with driveways. It only has to do with road frontage.
road frontage.
It's a different, it's the state of New Hampshire that's going to determine whether they have a driveway permit for the house or not.
Yeah.
So,
So the road frontage piece. So
It means they cannot, they're basically saying you cannot subdivide and create a lot without adequate road frontage, which really kind of locks you out, because you got nowhere to go after that, as far as road frontage. The only option would be to
I'd be more comfortable.
pursue one lot with what you could do with one lot,
Right, or
in single ownership.
in 10 years, if I bought a neighboring lot, it doesn't stop me from coming back here to say, I bought that road, now I bought this, now I do have the road frontage, now I do want to come here.
We wouldn't even have to come here, I think.
Well, if you
Lot
had
lines and
300 feet, then you wouldn't have to.
Just have to merge the properties.
Then you would just do a subdivision.
Okay.
I mean, if we were willing to give up future, if we said this lot could only have one single family lot on that, would that make it any different?
We're only concerned on frontage right now, so.
What they're gonna vote on.
Your variance is to split this into 19.21 and 125. That's the only thing we're considering. And I feel that you've got some questions, some other thoughts, some alternatives that maybe you want to discuss. And I feel over here that you guys ready to vote. I personally would like a little more time to look at the regulations.
What's on the agenda?
So
The other
I'll,
thing you can do, if you'd like, is you can, after the minutes are done, you can confer with council if you'd like. But, I mean, this is pretty clear cut. But I mean.
it's not for me, okay?
No, I don't mean
just-
clear cut in that way. I mean clear cut in that you need to substantiate
Yeah.
that all 5 of those have
All
been
5.
met.
I essentially,
That's what you
if
might want
one,
time to consider.
and I should say, if one of the 5 does not meet,
Correct.
that kills it. So if in our discussion of the answers to the 5 questions, if even one is not passable, that would end it. So I personally, just to get out of this
Right.
rigmarole,
No,
can I make a motion to continue
Yes.
on behalf of the board?
And
And I don't think we have anything on the agenda for next month at this point.
not yet, no, not that
How do you
we're.
feel about that?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. Yeah, it'll give us more
So
time.
a second on that?
I'll second.
All right, all those in favor? Aye. All right, so continuance to, date is February,
25th.
yeah, I just would like some
Just
time. here.
so you understand what I was saying, when I said it was clear cut, I meant
It's just
it
the
was
frontage.
clear cut as far as, from a legal, whether you'd need legal assistance, but
Right,
I certainly highly respect that you want to have your motion lined up either way. Either
Right.
being able to substantiate that all 5 have been met, or which ones have not been met.
I would
And
rather
put
do the
that
right
motion
thing.
on the table.
I would rather do the right thing than have the door shut. I really would, and as we've only got 3 of us, we've got to do it right. Because it has to be unanimous.
Thank you, Mr. Borman.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
I have for the 4th Monday, the 25th.
I thought it was, is that next month?
So February 25th should be the first case on the agenda. And
Any new information?
any new information you'd like to submit before that date is fine. Anything that you,
Can you put a date on it though? So we have time to do it?
how soon do you need the new info? If they submit anything new, how soon before the meeting do you
It
usually?
should be 10 days prior to the meeting, and that way we can send it out to you.
Is that good? So anything 10 days prior to the meeting. But I do thank you, and thank you for answering all the questions. It's just there's a lot of possibilities there.
Matt wants us to take a 5-minute
Yeah, I was gonna say something.
Matt wants us to take a 5-minute break? 30-minute break?
5 minutes.
I relinquish chairmanship back to chair.
Thanks. How you doing?
Hi.
We're moving on, case 1811. Before I do that, we have one board member that has to leave in 25 minutes. Then we'll have 3. So,
Let's do this fast.
what I'd like to offer as a suggestion is we always go over a brief overview
Yeah.
of everything. Basically end it there so we can look through it all and be fresh and ready to rock at the next
That's fine, I
meeting.
want 4. And
Okay,
So,
'cause that was the other thing.
that'll-
We'd have to be
nobody will
unanimous.
feel rushed for discussion from you, from us, from abutters. Let's just.
That's perfect.
This has only been going on 10 years, so another month isn't going to make that much difference.
Awesome, thank you very much for
Okay,
understanding.
sure. Thanks for the offer.
So if you'd like, just give us a brief idea of what you're doing, any specifics, what
Sure.
we want to look at.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Tim Phoenix. I'm an attorney from Hopeful, Phoenix, Gormley, and Roberts in Portsmouth. I'm here tonight with Brenda Colbo, who is with TFM MSC, who's done the technical work on this property for many years. So it's owned by a friend and client of mine, Peter Akins, who owns a business down in the Rye area. And I don't know when he bought this property, but this saga started roughly 10 years ago. And what we have is it's about a 1.9 acre lot. I don't know how well you can see it. This plan is a large copy of one that's in your packet. This is the environmental impact plan. I think it's the last of Exhibit 4?
3.
Exhibit 3? Exhibit 3, right. So here's the lot, the whole lot. These blue lines signify the 20-foot wetland buffer setback that's required. You can see this gray rectangle area here where my pointer is pointing now. That is a house foundation. So what happened was, back in 2008 and 9, I actually was here before the board and got relief from the board to put a house on the lot without any frontage. Mr. Akins got as far as putting the foundation in, and then, business issues, raising a family, he just never finished. There was an approved septic from back then. Is that what we're using now? Are we?
No, we have a new septic design, and it just hasn't been submitted to the state yet. We're waiting to get through this process.
The design is part of your part of the submission to you. So when Mr. Akins had MSC come back out to do the rest of the technical work to build, it was discovered, the primary discovery was that the wetland had migrated towards the house. Back then, the house and the other improvements to my memory met the 20-foot requirement, but for whatever reason, they went out and found that the wetland had creeped closer. It was over 20 feet away, and now it's not, such that what we have, it's hard to see on this plan, but what we need relief for is there's a generator planned here, right behind the house, that is 5.1 feet. The house itself is 7.9 feet. Then there's this driveway here, which has a little turnaround. There is a mistake in my submission where I say that driveway is 13.5 feet from the wetland, but it's really 6.6. I think the 13.5 was a measurement to the actual driveway, not the turnaround. It was just missed. So the driveway itself is 6.6. We need a variance because there's the septic tank, which of course will be buried, is here, and it's within the sideline setback, where it needs to be 20 feet, and it's 11 feet at its closest point, again buried. And the choice was to put it out there so that the septic tank is not in the buffer, and certainly not in the wetland. And then we need special exception relief for the location of the generator that I just showed you, the location of the driveway, and the alteration to get from this septic tank. The leach field is way out here out back. So we've got pipes, underground pipes going here, crossing a little finger of this wetland to get to the upland where the leach field is located. So that's what we need, and the primary reason we need it is because the wetland groove, if Mr. Akins had done all his construction back in 2009, he'd have been grandfathered for any changes, and we wouldn't need to be here. So First, I'll go through the special exception requirements under Section 4A of the zoning ordinance. It's all outlined in my submission. First thing you need is Conservation Commission review. We have had that review. There's a letter dated September 4, 2018 in your packet from the Conservation Commission. I'll get back to that and have some comments about it in a couple of minutes. Dredging, filling, or other alterations designed to minimize adverse impacts to the wetland and its setbacks, including placement outside the wetland overlay district. And so what's causing this is this very large wetland area in the property, the unique configuration of the wetlands, and the little narrow, essentially, finger of upland where you can put a house, and another area of upland where you can put a septic system, but to connect the two, you've got to go through the wetland and the buffer for temporary disturbance. So there's really no place on the lot that you can finish building a house with a septic system. I think a generator is reasonable, and a driveway without this relief. So we are minimizing the impacts to the extent possible, and given the configuration of the lot. The third requirement for the special exception is to restore the site as nearly as possible to original grade and condition. We will do that. That certainly can be a condition of this board. We've already got a shoreline permit. That's included in our submission. We wanted to wait on the wetland permit and on the septic permit rather than go through the expense until we got the relief from this board. But the shoreline permit itself, which is Exhibit 4, has some specific requirements, including erosion and siltation control shall be appropriate to the size and nature of the project and the physical characteristics of the site, including slope, soil type, vegetative cover, and proximity to wetlands or surface water. No person shall allow the activity to cause or contribute to any violations of the surface water quality standards established by the state. Any fill will be clean sand, gravel, rock, or other suitable material. And all these would typically be included in the building permit. Once that's issued, there would be conditions of the building permit issuance, plus whatever conditions you folks put on any approval. The DES approval, shoreline approval, also says within 3 days of final grading or temporary suspension of work in an area that is in or adjacent to wetlands or surface waters, all exposed soil areas shall be stabilized by seeding and mulching during the growing season, or if not within the growing season, by mulching with tack or netting and pinning on slopes steeper than 3.1. So there are checks and balances in effect to make sure that the place is restored as nearly as possible after these improvements are undertaken. And then the fourth requirement is state wetland permits are obtained when required. It will be required, and any permission you grant here will be conditioned upon getting the wetland permits. In other words, if you grant this and we don't get the wetland permits, we can't do the project anyway. So that's the special exception requirements for the wetland setback. There's almost identical requirements under Section 4B for wetland crossings and pressurized service lines, and that's essentially the line from the tank along this neck of the property through a very small wetland area and then to the leach field. So I'm not going to go through all of those special exception requirements again, because my intent was that I was talking about both the disturbance and the setbacks that we talked about. If you want me to, I will, but I think I've covered it. And we ask you to remember that this is to complete construction of a previously approved home that's partially built. At least there's a foundation there. One of the, it's not serviced by town water or sewer, so we have to have a well and septic. The septic system, as I said, you have a plan, but it will have to be approved by the state. So we are looking for the setbacks that I mentioned, and for 104.7 linear feet within the wetland buffer for that line, and disturbance of 1,047 square feet, and then 92 square feet of actual wetland for the line to cross the leach field, which would then be restored. So that's the special exception. The variance that we need is only for the septic tank that, of course, will be buried. So to go through those requirements quickly, the variances are not contrary to the public interest, and the spirit of the ordinance is observed, In my submissions here and other places, I consider those together because of the case I cite that it says they're related, the Malachi Glen case. And that case says, it must be determined whether granting the variance would unduly and to a marked degree conflict with the ordinance such that it violates the ordinance's basic zoning objectives. Mere conflict with the ordinance is not enough. In my submission, I've gone through then the Northwood zoning ordinance, its purposes, etc. I'm not going to repeat those now because they're in there. But that case that I cited, Malachi Glen, says one way we determine whether basic zoning objectives have been violated is, will the variance alter the essential character of the locality, or will it threaten the public health, safety, or welfare? So we've got a lot that already has a foundation on it, has to have a septic. The septic system will be, the septic tank obviously will be excavated to put it in, but then will be covered over and you won't even know it's there other than when it needs to be pumped out. Nobody will see it once it's in, so the existence of a septic tank that needs an 11-foot sideline setback requirement is not going to alter the essential character of the locality. It's sealed, and barring anything major unforeseen, it is not any kind of an issue, as would be the leach field where the effluent ends up to be leached out. And for the same reasons, we believe that the location of the septic tank is not going to threaten the public health, safety, or welfare. The purpose of the tank is to protect health, safety, and welfare, but being buried, that variance of 11 feet where 20 would be required is not going to threaten the public health, safety, or welfare. The third of the 5 variance requirements is that granting the variance will not diminish surrounding property values. Again, the value of surrounding properties are primarily determined by the potential for what can happen on this lot. What can happen on this lot was determined 10 years ago to allow a house that is now changed slightly because of the encroachment of the wetlands that now requires the wetland setback, the special exception for the wetland buffer effect, the small wetland crossing for the pipes to get to the leach field, and the location of the septic tank, which we didn't want to put in the buffer if we didn't have to. So we don't believe that any of these variances, this variance, the septic tank location variance, will diminish property values. The fourth of the 5 requirements is that denial of the variance results in an unnecessary hardship. That's a 3-prong test. You folks went through it in the 2 previous ones. The first prong is special conditions exist that distinguish the property from others in the area. Obviously, this has special conditions because it's significantly burdened by a wetland which has actually grown somewhat over time, that crowds where you can put anything, including the house, the driveway, the septic, the elements of the septic system out to the back. The second requirement for hardship is there's no fair and substantial relationship between the public purposes of the ordinance and its application in this instance. So again, this is only relating to the septic tank. Structure setbacks exist why? To protect the character of the neighborhood, to prevent fires, to provide adequate air, light, space, availability of landscaping, sight lines, and separation between people, sunlight, and air circulation. This tank, which will be buried and no one will see, will in no way violate any of those requirements for the sideline setback. The third prong of the hardship test is that the proposed use is reasonable. It's going to be, hopefully, a single-family home permitted in the district with the amenities and requirements that a single-family home would have. So we believe that the use is reasonable. And the final test for variance is that substantial justice will be done by granting the variance. And the test is if there's no benefit to the public that would outweigh the hardship to the applicant, this factor is satisfied, and that's the Harborside case that I've cited. Any loss to the applicant not outweighed by a gain to the general public is an injustice, and that's that Malachi Glen case that I cited. So because this is going to be underground, because the septic is required to use the house, there's no benefit to the public from a tank that's going to be put in, covered up, grassed over, and then pumped from time to time as necessary. On the other hand, if you deny that variance, arguably they can't put in a septic system, which means they can't have a house and they have no place to live. So we think it's clear that the public, there's no benefit to the public that would outweigh the hardship to the applicant if the variance was denied. I want to turn back quickly to the Conservation Commission, because that was one of the requirements, is Conservation Commission review for the special exception. So their letter of September 4th, 2018, I just want to point out a couple of things from it. In the second paragraph, full paragraph, the Conservation Commission notes that the wetland boundary seems to have migrated over time. That's what we found as well. The second paragraph says that the wetlands plan that apparently they reviewed had been delineated with a name and date, but there's no stamp or signature. That has been changed, and what's submitted in your packet is a stamped, signed plan. They note that the hill that was created to create the septic chamber drain field is small but steep, and appropriate siltation control measures to prevent erosion should be taken, which we will do, and which the state has required in its shoreline permit anyway, and certainly will in any septic, in its septic approval. There's an issue, Brenda, you might have to address this. Environmental impacts page of the plan is a permit by notification was obtained to install a drain structure. Is that off the table now?
We haven't applied for that. No, we're going to do that all at the same time.
Okay, so there'll be another one applied for because that was back in 2010. The Conservation Commission notes the shoreline permit plan was issued and is shown on the map with existing conditions. And then the main thing I wanted to comment on was on the second page. It says it does not show how the area may be restored, although the site is so disturbed that such a plan may be irrelevant. Well, we don't think it's irrelevant. I get the point, but we think it should be restored to the extent we can where we are creating additional disturbance, and it will, as I would say, required by you folks with a condition and as required by the state DES. They also note that there's no possible alternate location for the septic line, and we'd like you to keep that in mind. We agree, and that's why we need part of the relief we've asked for. And this is the main point of my going back to this. The Conservation Commission says a gravel driveway rather than the paved driveway in the plan would minimize further impact to the wetland. Mr. Akins is willing to stipulate to put in some kind of permeable driveway. It probably wouldn't be gravel, it would probably be engineered permeable pavers, which is actually better than gravel because gravel compacts over time. But he's willing to that stipulation, which should address your concerns and certainly would address the concerns of the Conservation Commission. They close with invasive species that should be removed and destroyed. I'm not sure what that means. I know what it means. I know what the sentence says, but I don't know if they're talking about in the area where we're causing disturbance or somewhere else. So Mr. Akins is willing to look into that.
We added note 5.
I can't read that. Can you read it? I can't see it.
Existing non-native invasive plant species will be identified, removed, destroyed, and legally disposed of off-site according to the latest University of New Hampshire cooperative extension methods for disposing non-native plants.
So I take that to mean wherever they are.
Yeah.
Well, that's good.
I think that's all I have. We're hopeful that you will feel comfortable approving this minor variance. We've met the requirements for the special exception because without them, the house can't be completed. Certainly, we're happy to answer questions, address your questions or any questions of the neighbors.
Mr. Chairman, could I suggest, in light of the fact that Justin has to leave, and these folks have patiently been here, that maybe if they have questions, if you're going to continue, that they have an opportunity to at least say something.
Yeah, no, we'd like that too.
Yeah, I'm sure you would, to hear their comments.
So if there's any
To the microphone or sit? That's fine. And let me just get some notes here.
We just need you to...
Hi there, my name is George Chapman. I'm the abutter, along with my sister, Sandra Siemens. And since they put the cellar hole in 2008, 2009, we've had problems with flooding. And our property is now being flooded because they raised the property 4 feet above ground level where they put the foundation in. And now the water has nowhere to go because it's set back in the property so far. And if you'd like to see my map, I got this from 2008 when I was here.
Could you, on that map, just point out where your property is? Okay, so you're right there. Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
And I don't believe we'd like a generator running, echoing to us if there's a power outage, unless it's a quiet one.
Can we ask questions of the abutter?
There is a noise ordinance, yeah.
Of the recent rainfall, I was out on the property today. How did the weekend fare with the rainfall?
All ice.
All ice?
The whole road's ice. And water running down.
Your side or is it Kramis Drive? Did Kramis Drive flood?
I don't know.
Okay.
Our road ends at our property that goes Kramer's properties next door.
Okay, thank you.
Or Kramer's Road. We're on Light Drive.
Okay, you're on the other side.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I do have.
I have a bigger map if you'd like to see.
That's okay.
I do have just a question. How far roughly is the house from the common property line? Your house, roughly?
Well, we have something.
It's on the map. It is marked on this map.
Yeah, I see it. I just don't know how far that is.
Oh, that's a shed.
All right, we can figure it out from the stair.
Yeah.
Is there anybody else that would like to speak?
Oh, another map.
Probably 80, 70, maybe. I don't have a scale.
Well, there's a map here. We're here. That's the house.
That's close enough. I got a handle on it.
All right, thanks, sir. Was there anybody else that wanted to speak?
Anything else?
Okay, so seeing there's no other abutters, at this point, I think what we'll do is, if I can get a motion, I'll make a motion to continue this case till February 25th. It'll be second on the agenda following the Parrington case.
That makes sense.
So it should be pretty quick. I think the majority of the Parrington case is finished, but
That's fine,
we'll
we understand.
pick it up there.
Okay.
So everybody in the audience knows that we'll be picking this up next month as well.
And the butters should know too that if they were individual variances, there is a point where they can input also.
Sure.
This is not a one-time.
Yeah, they can speak, yeah.
They have other opportunities.
Right.
Can I get a second?
Yes.
I'd like to do a site walk if possible, if we can try and get it done before that. I don't know if anybody's in agreement with it.
Sure.
I'll go, I mean, I was out there today.
That was your footprints, yeah, okay.
That's what I was looking at. I didn't know how far up the property went, but if that's possible from now till then. So at the next meeting, we already have in our mind what we're looking at, what we're already doing.
Sure. And I didn't get to do a site walk, so I will do
That's
this one.
fine.
Are there stakes that show, I mean, if you could throw a few stakes on what we're looking at, maybe some pinpoints.
Are you suggesting like a group site walk or just you guys?
You're planning a site walk.
It's a small enough piece of property that,
Yeah, I mean, they had the flags up on the trees saying delineating marks or wetland marks.
They're probably wetland flags.
Yeah, the wetland flags.
Yeah.
We can certainly make arrangements to have Brenda or somebody from MSC there to, because they know the property in and out.
I mean,
Do you want to schedule a speed?
I've been out there twice already, and I had the maps and stuff,
Okay.
so I feel like I went back up to the septic system and all. I'm more curious about the wetland delineation. Again, with a if there is, it's probably not possible, but just the movement of the wetlands in a 10-year period. So obviously we can see where they are right now. But, originally they must have been much further back.
You can leave it here, or you can bring it back
10
in,
or 15
whichever you
feet further
want.
back.
I personally am good for,
Okay.
with more flags or more bells or whistles out there, I would be fine if I go out again, but I've been out twice. What do you think, do you feel like you need the guided walk, or?
Or just some stakes or something, yeah.
No, I mean, yeah, I guess if you could just throw maybe a couple of stakes up
Yeah.
and mark what's on, what it is,
Sure.
or.
Yeah, that's easy to
Because
do.
now,
Sure.
I mean, I don't know, I didn't have my stuff with me. I just knew the address,
Right.
and I found the foundation. I'm like, oh, it must be here.
Right.
But I'll just take the map out. Yeah, we don't have to do
It doesn't
a
have to be-
boardwalk. I'll just get back out
Yeah,
again with the
it's
map.
just hard to schedule
Kind of take a
one.
look.
Yeah, give us
By
a
then.
couple days to get out there. And,
Okay.
And the
probably
last
next
time you
week would be
guys
good.
took
Okay.
me.
All right, then that's fine.
Right.
Do I have a second?
Second for continuation to the 25th?
Yep.
Yes.
Great. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion
Thank you very
passes.
much.
Thank you
very
for your concise intro.
Okay, everybody sit right where they are.
Oh,
Yes, why don't we do it?
was this a group photo?
They want to see all the rich people on the zoning board.
Squeeze in there before Justin. Okay, yeah. It'll have a coffee. Zoning board members need coffee.
I mean, what? I don't think I look good.
Oh,
Wait,
I'm so sorry.
try not to get all my chins in, okay?
I'm working on it. Hurry. Great, thank you.
We're already on TV. Now we're just going to be photographed.
Hey, the fan clubs, we're gonna be getting fan mail and stuff. I could do that.
Or possibly, if they watch the video, some awards at the, what?
There should be
Oscars,
like the
Golden Globe,
Northwood,
something.
the Northwood award, yeah, the little,
Oh, we're not adjourned. He's still running like, we're not adjourned.
So, is there anything else?
Where are our new members?
yeah, that's a good
Make a
question.
motion to adjourn?
Second.
All right, I still have to find the continuation.
All in favor?
That one's passed.
Bye.
Aye.